Let me just introduce my guest. Thank you so much for finding time, gentlemen. Right next to me, Andrew Franklin, who's a security expert. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you for having me.
And of course, right next to Franklin is Dr. Justice Juma, leader, Justice and Freedom Party. Good morning, Doc.
Good morning.
You're
Good
okay?
morning, Linda. Okay.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
So before we go to the discussions, or maybe the topics of discussion, this story on, of course, Magoha. So far, if we are to rate him, has he done well after, his appointment, as we see all these issues to do with matters of education, and sadly enough, nothing commendable. Fights and fights.
Well, yes, Magoha is in his own man and in his own way, based on professional credentials. Yes, one would rate him within the professional cadre to have achieved, rising up from being a VC at Nairobi University,
Right.
and his performance within the institution, and then the radical reforms he brought at NEC, and currently his visibility with the Ministry of Education. And in his own person, yes, you would say he has achieved. But when you come to education and expectation of education, there is especially the path that is taken regarding his understanding and the reforms that he's implementing. Probably it ought to have been a bit different if we wanted to have the results that is relevant to our country to date. Because education is something dynamic.
Yeah.
Education cannot be static. And actually the things that we studied some 10 years or even 5 years might not be the things we'll be studying in the next 20 or 30 years or even 10 years to come.
Right.
And if you find somebody still enforce the concept of 20 years or 30 years today, like though they should be the gospel truth, then yes, one should be worried. And this is coming at a point when you saw cases of graduates
Right.
with the distinctions staying in the streets
yeah.
without actually having tangible results of the education fruits. And these things are actually alarming. And what we needed to do as a society are to actually ask ourselves alternative measures that needs to be taken for education to be fruitful and functional to our students.
Right.
But if we continue in the same ways, which have produced those results, because as it's talk right now, the rate of unemployment is very high.
Right.
And however much, yes, we would want to blame the students to create jobs and all that, sincerely scrutinize the curriculum keenly. That curriculum is not an entrepreneurial gear type of curriculum. It is an employment-based curriculum. So the moment you graduate these individuals and expect them to create jobs
Yep.
vis-a-vis how you train them, then it becomes contradictory.
All right.
The only solution is then tailor-make the curriculum to favor what you're talking about. Yet you have the opportunity and the infrastructure, all the instruments that is necessary to do that. You choose to implement the archaic curriculum or the concept that render people employees and without creating jobs. In other words, somebody like Magoha is setting Kenya for crisis. And if I was Uhuru Kenyatta, and this has been the Jubilee problem, their concept and mode, their vision for education right from the beginning, I knew was not going to deliver Kenya to where Kenya wants to be educationally.
And I think we'll be looping in Andrew Franklin to tell us what he sort of thinks about the kind of education system that we have right here in the country and what we see on, of course, other different countries abroad. Magoha was considered to be very instrumental during the time of Matiang'i and the different, proposed, changes that we witnessed during his time that people considered to be good changes. Some of them said, the right-hand man was certainly nobody else but Magoha. So at that particular time when he was appointed, relations came aboard as to how we're going to see transformation that is good enough for the country. During this time when we were talking about the implementation of the new curriculum, today we're having issues. We've not been able to successfully implement, or even at that piloting program, the new curriculum as it stands. We're still gambling with the lives of our children. We know very well that, education is at the core of building a nation, and you cannot go wrong when you're setting up some of the systems in matters education. So when you see what is on the newspapers today, we still consider it as Game of Thrones, as it has been termed, and now Commission is proposing the delay of salary reviews. We've seen how much NAT has been battling the other day, blows and punches directed to Sosion, and now Vice Chancellor is calling upon Magoha to reconsider his move of saying that he would want to merge campuses or to merge universities, because he sort of feel like, there's that growing need and a growing number of people who would want to enroll in this institution. So when you decide to merge and scrap off others, then where will you place some of these millions of Kenyans or students who would want to enroll? So a lot of hula baloo within the education sector. If you look at what we have today in Kenya in comparison to what we have abroad or other countries that are doing well in matters education, have we failed, like Dr. would put it?
Well, okay, I think the nature of your question goes to the confusion, the administrative disarray in this country that I've commented on. And it's become very clear to me, after having been here for some 38 years, that we do have 2 to 3 million Kenyans living overseas and working overseas.
Right. So
we do produce lots of great professionals. I was at a breakfast seminar with James Boyd McPhee at Strathmore, and what he said his recommendation was, and he was born in Kibera apparently, older than I am, and his recommendation was that Kenyan students should get as many good qualifications as possible to go work elsewhere.
But sometimes you hear this, when they get there, you're forced to upgrade. Well, that's the level of merit.
That's all right too. I mean, it's not, you may call yourself, you may have a PhD here, but I don't know if you have a PhD in rocket science that you don't have to upgrade. No, I just as an observation, when you drive around the city center, and you're not looking out for other traffic, there's just campuses, it seems, everywhere. Everywhere. On Moy Avenue, over by Tom Boyer, there are campuses that seem to be where brothels used to be. The thing is, I heard. The fact is, though, that we in this country, we introduced the 844 system.
Right.
And that seems to, that had a lot of controversy when it was being introduced. But I think that seemed to work out fairly well. Because many of the Kenyans working overseas are products of that very same system. We, in the last 5 or 6 years, we have introduced laptops, we thought, in the schools. Right. But we don't have laptops in the schools. Again, the new U.S. ambassador, Kyle McCarter, caused a bit of controversy on Twitter, if you will, when he pointed out that not everyone really needs a college degree or a university degree, and that there's a great need for electricians and artisans and tradesmen. Now, National Youth Service, which was established during the emergency and in the aftermath of the emergency, and then also a similar scheme in Tanzania and in other countries, trained artisans, trained motor mechanics, trained heavy equipment operators. Now we think that National Youth Service might be running a factory to produce military uniforms or police uniforms, but that was not the function of National Youth Service. And it was not unusual if you broke down in the bush in your vehicle that somebody would show up and show you a National Youth Service card. This is true, motor vehicle mechanic, and we'd get his tools. Now that's what the economy needs. There is a notion that Tullow Oil, whatever you say about the earlier oil export program, or finding of oil in Turkana, and all the politics that swirls around there, they need welders. Right. They need world-class journeyman artisans, and they don't have them in this country. So why are we not producing craftsmen and artisans? It's also been pointed out, and I brought a smile to my face. I saw from the United States that someone mentioned, we're sending too many students to higher education, to university, and they're burdened with these gigantic debts. But electricians get wealthy. Plumbers get wealthy. And I've seen on my trips back to the States that if you need a plumber, they come 24/7, and they do make a lot of money. But this is skilled work. There's nothing wrong with being a craftsman, an artisan, and actually being able to work on huge projects. and to fix things. So, you know, I think we've really lost sight of the needs of the economy. We have also, and education cannot be just thrown out in a vacuum. The fact that we have not used the African Growth and Opportunity Act since 2000 to maximize the exports of duty-free products and build and add value addition to products that go to the United States. That we have not developed cotton plantations in the far west of the country or in Nyanza. But the point about all these kinds of commercial farming operations is that they feed in products into manufacturing, which is supposed to be one of the big four. Supposed to be one of the big four.
Yeah.
So, you know, so by their very nature, manufacturing, which requires production facilities, then also requires people to fix the machines, to maintain the factories and the facilities. You need to have roads if you're going to build a value chain from the cotton fields of Nyanza to a shelf in Walmart in the United States. We don't have that. We're not doing that. Right. In the 80s, the country began to develop a lot of automobile assembly plants and also producing the bits and pieces that go into cars. Right. So that before the influx of reconditioned vehicles in 1997, we, you know, in the aftermath of lifting of exchange controls in 1994, the country down at AVA in Mombasa was producing Toyota Corollas. Right. There were some of them. Isuzu, General Motors, was actually assembling Jeep Cherokees in the mid-1980s. Yeah, so and the point is that if you build up an industry like that, you can export. Right. South Africa, for example, exports BMWs and Mercedes to the United States under AGOA. Yeah. Which means that those luxury vehicles have to meet the same standard as a BMW that's being sent from Germany to the United States, or is being assembled in one of the BMW factories, which are located in places like Alabama and Mississippi and South Carolina, as is Mercedes. So in South Africa, it means you have the need for artisans to keep and maintain a 21st century motor vehicles manufacturing facility up to stuff, to keep it running. There's no reason why Kenya couldn't have been exporting vehicles, but we don't.
We don't. So that means there's a huge gap.
And yet that is not just a policy failure, that's a failure, a grotesque failure of implementation by the private sector and the government. Now, because we haven't tried to maximize the use of AGOA, which has now been extended probably for the last time till 2025, which means you're not going to have a lot of investment coming in here into building these value chains anymore. The fact is, though, that we have failed to essentially develop a sector that says to Kenya Power, we need affordable, reliable electricity 24/7 throughout Kenya. Not just to give a 30% reduction in cost.
That would be possible if
briefly, Doc, because then we want to run away from that. It's not the question of... That
would be possible if there was a relevant policy, Frank.